Hello, my tennis patients. In today's clinic, I'm going to be showing you the secret of the modern forehand, and that although every single player has their own unique characteristics, there are undoubtedly common threads and essential steps which can't be skipped. And I'm going to show you 5 players, actually 6 players in this video, and these players have very different styles and techniques, but they all go through the same steps, and I'm going to prove that to you. Let's get right into it. So first, we have obviously an astounding example of a forehand that we can all strive to have, and once I break it down for you, you're going to realize that it's not as complicated as you thought. The forehand is broken down into what I would consider 3 major principles. Number 1, we have a no backswing, a unit turn. The non-hitting hand comes back on the throat of the racket, and the racket stays in front of the hand. Okay? Now, as we see, the racket is also inverted. Okay? That is storing the energy and preventing the racket from going ahead of our body. We can also see that as the ball bounces, we let go of the non-hitting hand from the throat of the racket. From here, we've loaded on the outside leg, the upper body is turned past the hips, and the energy is stored. Now, to transfer the energy and release it, the racket free falls into pat the dog, right? The strings go to the floor. It's the only way to get topspin. It's an essential step. The non-hitting hand goes parallel with the baseline. We fire up with the legs. The racket comes through as the last part of the kinetic chain. The wrist is back in the slot. Boom. There's no wrist roll. What's happening here is the angle in the wrist is relaxing. It forms a straight line with the racket head, and we get a windshield wiper finish. Boom. Now, I'm going to show you how 5 other players follow the exact same steps as Federer, and their swing is not really much different from his. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, why am I showing you Grigor Dimitrov? Because he has a textbook forehand. In fact, it is most similar to Federer's in my opinion, just due to the unique style of it, but he essentially follows the exact same step. He takes the racket back past his hips with the upper body. It's a unit turn, right? The racket is staying in front of the hand, and from here we shift onto the outside leg. The racket free falls into pat the dog, strings to the floor. We go. The arm is loose. He swings inside to outside. The body is going to fire first, and the racket comes through as the last part of the kinetic chain, causing it to fall back in the slot position. Okay? It's a byproduct of firing the body. The arm is the last part. Now, this is going to be a really good example of showing the angle of the wrist. What I'm talking about, covering the top of the ball with the windshield wiper, you need to let go of the angle. Okay? It's a straight line at the end. So we're no longer back in the slot position. Boom. Beautiful. Now let's go to the next player. The next forehand we're going to be looking at is Andy Murray. A little bit of a different style from the first 2 guys, but nonetheless, he checks the same boxes. Non-hitting hand on the throat of the racket, turns the shoulders past the hips. I think he lets go a little bit earlier. It's hard to tell in this scenario, but just so you know, if a player doesn't have the non-hitting hand on the throat of the racket, it doesn't mean that the non-hitting hand isn't following very close by. Okay, so there is some instances where players let go earlier or they don't touch it at all, but the hand will be following close by. But it's an effective system in order to turn your shoulders as a unit. He's turned his shoulders past his hips. Okay, again, semi-open stance. The racket free falls into pat the dog. We close the strings. The racket's hooded so we can get topspin. Okay, we fire the hips, uncoil, bring in the non-hitting hand. Oops. And from here, the racket's back in the slot as the last part of the kinetic chain. right? The butt cap leading towards the ball is a byproduct of violent body rotation to the targets, contact points, and windshield wiper, and we relax the wrist. Okay, now let's go to the next forehand. Next, this guy doesn't need an introduction. Obviously, he has an amazing forehand that we can all learn something from. If it's good enough for Djokovic, it's good enough for you. Shoulders turn as a unit. Notice with all these players, we could almost draw a triangle with their shoulders and the racket head. Let's see how long it stays with the shoulders. Okay, it's still in between the shoulders, and now boom. As we let go, he's got a little bit more of an extreme grip than the other players, hence why his racket looks like this. But watch, the racket is hooded again. It free falls into pat the dog, strings to the ground, right? Little bit different style, but he's still checking the same boxes. Load on the outside leg, fire the hips first. The racket comes through as the last part of the kinetic chain. Contact points, windshield wiper. We lose the angle in the wrist. It goes straight. Boom. Up and over the ball, covering the top of the ball, ripping it. Let's look at the next player. All right, none other than Rafael Nadal. Now, we're going to see here, because he has a little bit more of a unique style, also an extreme grip, actually a little bit more similar to what Djokovic does, but I'm going to show you how he still ends up in the same position as everyone else, despite how it may seem here. So again, the shoulders coil together, okay, the non-hitting hands on the throat of the racket until the ball bounces. But watch here, as he let goes, now the racket's hooded. Tell me that this is any different than the same position that we saw Federer get into, Dimitrov get into, Murray get into. The racket's hooded, and it's relatively in front of his hand, okay? It's not behind his hand, it's not as inverted as the other guys. That's just his unique style. And from here, the racket comes straight down into pat the dog. So the racket is not behind his hand. He's not pointing it like a flashlight, okay? It's loose, it's along for the ride. The racket face is still in front of his hand. Uncoil with the non-hitting hand. Fire the body first. Boom. Racket comes through as the last part of the kinetic chain. Windshield wiper. No more angle on the wrist. You can't skip the steps. Now I'm going to show you Andre Agassi. Now, why would I be showing you a video of Andre Agassi if this is a video about modern tennis? Well, just like him and many other older generation players, which I'm not going to be showing you in this video, perhaps another time, they've actually been hitting the forehand the exact same way for a long time. Okay, it's not as modern as people think, and I'm going to show you how Andre Agassi hits the same forehand that all these guys do. The non-hitting hand comes back on the throat of the racket. The racket head is inverted. Okay, boom. The racket is hooded. It falls into the slot. Okay, pat the dog, strings to the floor. Racket comes through as the last part of the kinetic chain. Windshield wiper. No more angle on the wrist. Okay. It's so similar. The game really hasn't changed as much as people think. This word modern tennis. It's a fun word. I like to use it, but it's a little bit misleading. Okay, like we're calling these guys, next gen players. Are they really though? What is next gen? Really? Are they just younger? Maybe faster, stronger? Who knows? All that I know is that there is one way to hit a textbook forehand, and the proof's in the pudding. Okay, you can't skip the steps. In any event, thank you for tuning in, and use what you've learned to modernize your game.
Tennis Doctor is a self-help tennis book for adults. You could have 40-inch biceps, rapid anticipation, fancy feet, and a brilliant mind, but if you have poor swing mechanics, you will never win. On the contrary, you can have slow reactions, terrible footwork, and be 40 pounds overweight, yet still produce a good shot if you can perfect your swing. By reading Tennis Doctor, you own the secret to a perfect swing. And if we have to, we'll call you an Uber to get you to the ball in time. Read it now on Amazon and listen to it on Audible. Are you tired of going down a rabbit hole of tennis videos? I have organized, categorized, and systemized the best tennis information for playing advanced level tennis. And you can have it. Copy it, try it, and get better fast. Get started today with the link down below.